I woke up this morning and it was still July, at least to the best of my knowledge. And according to Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, in his book, The 12 Powers of Man, July represents understanding. And understanding is defined as the ability to comprehend. The disciple that is associated with understanding is Thomas. How appropriate. And our Thomas, the Thomas in us, gives us the ability to see beyond appearances. We are able to see beyond untruth to truth. The color of understanding is gold. You're invited to wear gold of some shape or form to remind you of your very powerful faculty of understanding. And the faculty of understanding resides in the front of your brain. Understanding is a very powerful power. Forgiveness is essential for us to be whole, prosperous, and free. Giving love for unlove opens the way for good to flow to you and flow to me. Holding on to resentments constricts the flow. The way to live fully is to forgive and let them go. Forgiveness, seeing through the eyes of love. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, in the book Revealing Word, defines forgiveness as a process of giving up the false for the true, erasing sin and error from the mind and body. Sin, defined by Unity, is missing the mark. Now, how many in the room has missed the mark? Twice. 3 times. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm in the same canoe. Outstanding. And in our humanness is where we miss the mark. When I step into Leavitt thinking Leavitt knows best, it is wildly entertaining for you to watch. But it's not much fun for Leavitt. So, as I had mentioned, to get out of Leavitt back into my divine nature, take a breath. Because that takes me home to where me, God, and love are one. So forgiveness is erasing the error thinking or the missing the mark in our mind and our bodies. Not only will we have better thoughts, but our bodies will become whole and healed as we forgive. Resentment is what we hold, and it's a burden on our bodies. And forgiveness will help us heal and to become whole once again. Emily Cady, in the book Lessons in Truth, says, to forgive is to give for, to give some actual definite good in return for evil given. I understand this to be, it is giving love for unlove. Again, we as humans, we're divine by nature. And as humans, we can act extraordinarily undivine-like. But yet, the truth is, the love that is our pure essence of being, the love that is me, is the love that is you. It's the love of all beings. And that connects us as one. The love that is me is the love that is you, and that connects us as one. And in that connection, we have the ability to forgive, not only ourselves, but others. Restoring ourselves to health, restoring ourselves to prosperity, restoring ourselves to joy, restoring ourselves to peace, through forgiveness. Through forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean condoning behavior. Some of you might know that a couple years ago, I was a juror in a capital federal case. It was capital because the crime happened at Schofield Barracks on a federal base. You might know the case. The soldier's name was Naeem Williams, and over a 6-month period, he tortured and beat his 5-year-old daughter and eventually killed her. Now that trial, actually it was 3 trials, but that whole process took about 14 weeks. And if I could not see him in the eyes of love, I would not have got through it. But not only did I see him with the eyes of love, because remember now, the truth of him is the truth of me. The love that is me is the love that is him at the core of his being. But not only did I see him with the eyes of love, but I had to see a lot of the witnesses and the attorneys, even the court, and sometimes even my fellow jurors. But we came together in one accord and did what we were there to do. But I don't condone the behavior. I absolutely know without a fact that he is living a life experience that is in equal measure to the behavior he did. I know it. I don't condone his behavior, but I must see him as I see me. If I cannot see the love in him, then I'm a hypocrite. Oh, I can see it in you, but I can't see it in him. No, I must see it in him as well. We must see it in everyone, first and foremost. And then through the eyes of love, we get a new perspective on the situation. We don't condone the behavior at all. We actually are able to see it in a new perspective where we can take an active interest in it and be able to come to closure or resolution in whatever way that is. But forgiveness is not condoning behavior. Please know that to be true. The poet Alexander Pope said something rather extraordinary. To err is human, to forgive is divine. Remember I was telling you about Leavitt being Leavitt? Yeah, we're going to make mistakes. We've made mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. Hopefully we don't make them a lot, the same one anyway, but we're going to make mistakes. But the ultimate gift is that we're divine by nature, and our divinity gives us the ability to forgive, to erase that error thinking. We're going to make mistakes. Yep, going to make mistakes. How soon you understand you don't have to do them 3 or 4 times is up to you. But know that your divine nature will allow you to get to that place fast. It's in a breath. Revenge or forgiveness. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I just play one on Sunday. No. But I know enough about that type of thing to be dangerous. What I do know is behavior begets behavior. Where we as humans are habituates. We're going to do something and we're going to do it again and again and again. So behavior begets behavior. Now, we all know that there's been some horrendous behaviors on the mainland and in the world recently. Horrendous behaviors. So what are we going to do with that? What happens is unloving behavior begets unloving behavior, which begets more unloving behavior. We got to stop the cycle. Yeah. And we can stop the cycle by seeing through the eyes of love, beholding the love that is me, that is them. First and foremost. And then we can see it differently. We must stop the cycle by responding in love instead of reacting in kind. Folks, we got to stop the cycle. And it starts with us, me and you, our community. And then eventually, the world will be a kind, loving, unified, harmonious place. But it starts with us. See with the eyes of love. Behold the truth of yourself and everyone, first and foremost. And then we can have a discussion, be in conversation about behavior. Come to resolution. Resolution will become behavior modification. And we all will see with the eyes of love, first and foremost. We've got to stop the cycle. An extraordinary, arguably the most extraordinary act of forgiveness is in Luke 23:34. You all know it. You may know it, not know it by this verse, but you know this scripture. And it is arguably the most extraordinary act of forgiveness. Jesus has been crucified. And folks, that's got to be excruciatingly uncomfortable. And that's being mildly. And the men that have crucified him are down on the ground at his feet, taking lots for his stuff. And what does he say? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Wow. In that situation, to be able to forgive, folks, Jesus is our way shower. We ought to follow in his footsteps, and if he can forgive in that instance, How dare us not forgive for someone cutting us off on the freeway? How dare us not forgive? How dare us not forgive? Imelda Shanklin is my most favorite unity writer, and in her book, Selected Studies, she says, forgiveness is a unification of the soul with God, comparable to the raindrops' reception by the sea. That is well written. And what it means to me is that forgiveness is our opportunity to step back into oneness, to step back into our unity with God, each other, and all beings. Just like the raindrop falls into the sea and unites back as one with the sea, so can we through forgiveness. An opportunity to return to oneness. Forgiveness. Charles Fillmore, in his book, Jesus Christ Heals, says, when you forgive yourself, you cease doing the thing that you ought not to do. I saw a lot of hands go up saying that you've missed the mark a few hundred times. There you go. Yeah, how many times do we have to do something before we realize that quite possibly the unpleasant life experience I'm having is because I was kind of numb last week? But forgiveness is the awareness that, okay, geez, I'm unpleasant right at the moment. Let's see. Oh yeah, I had that thought last week. And forgiving me for having that thought allows me to step back into a way of thinking that will bring to me the abundant life I want to live. We don't need to do the same thing over and over. Well, maybe some of us do. Well, I've done a couple things more than once. But what we need to understand is that through forgiveness, we can cease doing what is no longer serving us. If we have to forgive ourselves for an action or a thought or a word, chances are we probably don't want to do it again. Agreed? Forgiveness. It is spoken pretty well in Ephesians, Paul's letter to the Ephesians, which reads, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamoring and blasphemy be put away from you, together with malice. Like it wasn't enough to get rid of bitterness, wrath, anger, and clamoring. We have to get rid of the malice as well. And be kind to one another and tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God has forgiven us through Christ. It kind of tells us how to live. To be kind, tender-hearted, to be loving, to see with the eyes of love first, to respond in love, not react to the feeling. We are to be loved. Love is all we need to do. It's our pure essence of being, folks. That's all we need to do is be love. Forgiveness will change your life. I'd like to tell you a story about Reverend David. Reverend David Ridge is the senior minister at Unity Living Waters Spiritual Community in Arvada, Colorado. He is also my mentor in the International Ministerial Program. I probably need to forgive him for putting up with me for 4 years. He deserves a medal. We meet twice a month over the computer. It was really cool. I met him at conference. So he actually is a person. I thought for the longest time he just lived in my computer. This guy was in my computer. But he's a human being. He's a great guy. We got to spend some time, and it was really wonderful. Last week we were having our discussion that we have, and I told him I was speaking today on forgiveness. And he says, did I ever send you the article I wrote about my forgiveness experience? And I said, no. Well, so he sent it to me. And this is a synopsis, a little bit of that article. It's very powerful. David worked at a software company. He was vice president of marketing and sales. Was very, and still is, extraordinarily techno-savvy. Is a wizard. And he worked for this company for 6 or 7 years. And it was flourishing he was part of the reason that it was just flourishing, tripled in size, clients and all of that. Everything was going great. Income was flying up. And then he had a riff with the president. One of those little teeny things that left alone kind of turns into a little bit bigger thing. And then, next thing you know, you got an abyss. Well, this abyss led to him being fired. And then two of his co-workers who he had friends working with him and who he called his betrayers, one got his job as vice president of marketing and sales, and the other one became the president. Well, he grabbed onto bitterness and anger about this, and it gripped him. It gripped him. It had him completely. Completely. It drove him. It drove him to the point where he had 3 business ventures go bad, go south on him, to the point where he lost equity in his house. His relationships were dwindling. His deep, close friends of 50 or more were down to 2 or 3. It was affecting his home life, his family life. This bitterness, this resentment he had toward these fellas, it was eating him up. And then one of his saints, as he called them, one of the 2 or 3 that hung with him through all of this was like a 6-year period. One of his saints said, David, you have been unforgiving long enough. Dun, 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 dun. Intervention. This saint advised David, or invited David, to call those other 2 fellas, his betrayers, and sit down and have a conversation about what had happened. David's, what are you, out of your mind? You're nuts. You're crazy. I'm not going to talk to them ever again. Again, what was that? That was the resentment that had him. It had him. It was him. Not that his loving essence was gone. He had dialed down the switch. And he stormed off, and he was pouting and raging around and, in a fury about this, and then had an aha moment. There might be something to this little conversation thing. So he calls them up. And of course, they had feelings as well, and what have you. And remember now, in any type of situation, this isn't just one person. There's roles and responsibilities of everybody involved here. They get together and they have a conversation. It was extraordinarily uncomfortable, he said, for all 3 of them. But they started off in a conversation. It wasn't an argument, it wasn't a debate, it wasn't a negotiation, it was a conversation. And they met once, and they met twice, and they met again. And eventually that abyss-less friendship began to get filled, and it is now coming back. It isn't totally there because of the huge grip that this unforgiveness had with David. And what he discovered was that it was all about love. It was all about love. That if he could see, first he had to re-see the love in him. And then when he saw that, he was able to see the love in those other fellas. And then he realized it was all about when you have bitterness or unforgiveness, that means 2 things. It means, 1, that we're separate. Okay, that means that there is separation between me and you. And the other thing means is that you can do something to me. The truth is, number 1, that we are one. We're one with God, we're one with each other, we're one with all beings. That's the truth. And number 2, nobody can do anything to me unless I allow it. You can't make me do anything. You can't make me mad. You can't make me sad. You can't give me pain unless I allow it to happen. And he allowed it to happen so much that it just about ruined his life. And then he realized love is the answer. The divine love that is his pure essence, he called it forth to emerge and fill him. And it filled him, and it flowed through and as him with his other 2 friends. Well, betrayers. Now they're becoming friends. And that's what we can do. He understood that divine love lifted him up beyond where he was and broke the bond of that bitterness, that unforgiveness, and allowed him to forgive himself first and then them second. Love lifted him up to a point where he's flourishing. He's also now the director of marketing for Unity Worldwide Ministries. His church is doing great. He is doing phenomenal because he let go. He relieved the resentment. He let it go. It has no power or dominion over him. And it has no power or dominion over you or me. Any power we give resentment is us giving it. Folks, wrap it in love, release it, let it go. On occasion, Rev Jack would say, it works if you... Okay, folks, a little more congregation participation. With a little zelosity, please. It works if... All right, then. We're going to do an exercise. Yeah? I'd like to have you, as you sit, think of some resentment that you have. It could be anything toward yourself, toward somebody else. It could be toward the events that has happened recently. Something that you are holding resentment for. Some resentment. Now I'm wondering, what would it take to forgive that resentment? $20? What do you think, $40? 60? 80? 200? What would it take? $200 for you to forgive? Folks, this isn't bribery. It's called an incentive. But what if the incentive wasn't to forgive, but it's what you got after you forgave? What a concept. Forgiveness opens the way to our good. Resentment restricts the flow. So now, with that resentment in your mind, close your eyes, please, and see it again. Hold on to it, or see it. Visualize that resentment. Now call forth divine love that is your essence. Call it forth to fill you. And then wrap that resentment with love. Wrap it up. What does it look like? Wrapped up in love. It's all wrapped up in love. Now, with a blessing of gratitude, give thanks for the freedom that resentment will give you when you gently release it and let it go. What does that feel like? Free to be open more and more to your good each time that we forgive. Love is the answer. And with the breath gently and kindly return to this time and place, the ushers will be handing out a basket, and inside that basket is some good. So please, your good is coming to you right now. And of course, it wouldn't be a Leavitt service without an affirmation or two. So what I would like to do is I'd like to have us set the intention for forgiveness, if you're willing to set the intention for forgiveness. The first affirmation is, seeing through the eyes of love, I give love for unlove. If you are willing to set the intention for forgiveness, if you are willing to open your way for more and more good, let's speak this together with enthusiasm. Seeing through the eyes of love, I give love for unlove. Nice. Seeing through the eyes of love, I am forgiving of myself and others and open the way for my good. This will cement the deal. This will set the intention to be forgiving. Let's speak this with enthusiasm as well. Together. Seeing through the eyes of love, I am forgiving of myself and others and open the way to my good. Ah, that feels great. Being free and open to receive my good. Seeing through the eyes of love, we are able to clearly know that through forgiveness and the releasing of resentment, we lighten our load and we are free to grow. Existit Spiritu Pax Passus. Peace be with you.